Welcome back to B Master 79. In this lesson we are taking ielts speaking topic 43 describes something you did that made you feel proud, and we are doing the whole thing part 2 and part 3 from a blank page to a finished answer. 2 quick pieces of honesty before we start. Band 9 here is our own assessment against the publicly available ielts band descriptors. It is not a score awarded by a certified examiner. And our candidate, Trang, is invented, and so is her story. Copy the technique, never the content. Here is the plan. First, how part 2 actually works. Then the cue card exactly as it is printed. Then 1 minute of real brainstorming with the notes on screen. Then the full model long turn, broken into 4 pieces so you can hear the structure. Then all 5 part 3 questions, each with the thinking before the answer. And finally the language banks and the band descriptors. Nothing is skipped. Part 2 lasts about 3 to 4 minutes in total. The examiner hands you a card, a pencil and paper. You get exactly 1 minute to prepare, then you speak for 1 to 2 minutes. 3 things worth knowing. The examiner will not interrupt you and will not help you, so silence is yours to fill. You will be stopped at 2 minutes, and being stopped is completely normal. And the card's bullet points are not a test of obedience, but following them is the easiest coherence mark you will ever be given, so follow them. This is the card printed exactly as it appears on the source. Read it twice. The first 3 bullets are describing bullets. The last line, and explain why you felt proud of it, is the thinking bullet, and it is worth more than the other 3 put together. And these are the 5 part 3 questions that come with the same card. Read them now before you plan, because knowing where the discussion is going should influence the story you choose in part 2. Notice how quickly they leave the topic of pride behind. One thing to flag before we plan. The part 2 card is about pride, but 4 of the 5 part 3 questions on this same source are about goal setting and rewards at work. That is a wide swing away from the topic, and we are showing it exactly as printed rather than tidying it up. Treat it as useful practice. The examiner is allowed to widen the theme in part 3, so choose a part 2 story that also gives you something to say about effort, motivation, and reward. Now the 1 minute. 4 rules. Write keywords, never sentences, because a written sentence gets read aloud, and read aloud English is flat, over formal, and very easy for an examiner to spot. 1 line per bullet, in the card's own order. Spend the last 15 seconds only on the final bullet, because why you felt proud is the part candidates run out of time for. And choose specific over impressive. A small, true-sounding story beats the grand vague one every single time. Trang considered 3 stories. A national prize sounds impressive, but there is almost nothing to say about difficulty, and I worked hard fills about 10 seconds. Passing a driving test is universal, so it is hard to make it sound like hers. The Free English Club wins because it gives her concrete actions to describe real obstacles and pride that comes from persistence rather than from praise. Notice that she is not choosing the proudest moment of her life. She is choosing the most speakable one. And here are the actual notes in 60 seconds. Look at how little is written. No verbs in some lines. Abbreviations everywhere. Two friends bribed with grand's food is 4 words that will become a full sentence with a joke in it. That is the whole point of keyword planning. The notes carry the content and the grammar gets generated live, which is exactly what the examiner is trying to measure. One more thing before she speaks. These 5 phrases were loaded deliberately during the planning minute. An opening that refuses the obvious answer, a signpost for the method, an honest admission of difficulty, a near failure, and a line that reframes what pride actually is. 5 phrases is enough. Any more and you will be reciting. Here is the full long turn, in 4 pieces, 1 per bullet on the card. The candidate voice is a different voice from mine, so you always know who is speaking. Listen for the pauses. They are grouping ideas, not hunting for words.
The thing I'm proudest of isn't a qualification or a prize. It's a small free English club I set up for children in my grandparents' village, 2 hours outside Hanoi. I was 19, in my second year at university, and I'd gone back for the summer expecting to do nothing more strenuous than sleep. What I noticed was that the children there studied English from textbooks, but had almost never heard it spoken aloud. So I decided to run a class on Saturday mornings in a communal hall. I went about it methodically because enthusiasm on its own burns out. I asked the village committee for permission, which cost me nothing but a lot of nerves. Then I put together a 12-week scheme of work built around games and songs, since I wanted the children to associate English with laughing rather than with tests. I borrowed a speaker, printed the worksheets myself, and recruited 2 friends, mainly by promising them my grandmother's cooking. Honestly, it was far harder than I'd anticipated. The first Saturday, exactly 4 children turned up, and 2 of them were my cousins who'd been ordered to come. I cycled home completely deflated and came very close to dropping the whole thing. The real difficulty, though, was sustaining it. Once term started, I was travelling back at weekends, marking my assignments on the bus, running on very little sleep. And persuading parents took months because a free class is assumed to be worthless. As for why I'm proud of it isn't the numbers, although we ended up with around 30 regulars. It's that I kept my word to the 4 children who turned up that first week. Pride for me comes from following through when nobody would have blamed me for giving up. And when I handed it over, 2 of the older students took it on, so it's still running today, which means the best thing I built no longer needs me.
Let's measure that instead of guessing. That long turn was 327 words, and it ran for 1 minute 58 seconds, which is a rate of about 166 words per minute. Part 2 asks for 1 to 2 minutes, so that sits comfortably inside the window at a natural speaking rate. So why does that answer work? 5 reasons on screen. The one I want you to take away is the third. The difficulty bullet contains a genuine near failure. 4 children turned up, 2 of them forced, and she nearly quit cycling home. Candidates who describe only success sound rehearsed, and they throw away every opportunity to use concessive language, which is some of the most valuable grammar in the test. Here is the Part 2 language bank. Steal the frames on the left, not the story on the right. Refusing the obvious answer, understated humor, a cost idiom, an emotional low, and an abstract close. Those frames work on any achievement card you are ever given. Part 3 lasts about 4 to 5 minutes. The questions are abstract and about people in general, not about you, and the examiner will push back on what you say, which is a good sign rather than a bad one. Aim for roughly 40 to 90 seconds per answer, and answer the exact question first, then develop it. Developing a question you were not asked is the single most common way to lose coherence marks in Part 3. Question 1. Which is more important, personal goals or work goals? This is a comparison question, and there is a trap in it. Read the strategy. Refuse the forced choice first, then choose anyway. Refusing alone reads as evasion, choosing without nuance reads as thin. Give the criterion you are judging by here, which kind of goal survives longer. Concede a case where the opposite holds. That single move is worth more than any linking phrase.
I'd resist ranking them because for most people the two bleed into each other. But if I had to choose, I'd say personal goals on the grounds that they tend to outlast a job. Work goals are usually set by somebody else, a target, a promotion window, a quarterly figure, and they expire the moment you change employer. Personal goals, things like staying healthy or learning an instrument, are self-authored, so they survive redundancy or a change of career. That said, for someone supporting a family, work goals may simply have to take priority for a period, and there's nothing shallow about that.
Question 2. Have your life goals changed since your childhood? A past versus present question, which means it is really a tense showcase. Answer with a degree word, not just yes, enormously, marginally, almost beyond recognition. Move through time in stages, childhood, teens, now, because that hands you 3 tenses to demonstrate. Finish on what changed underneath the goals, not just the goals themselves. That is the Band 9 layer.
Enormously, almost beyond recognition. As a child, I wanted to be a flight attendant, purely because I thought the uniform looked glamorous, which tells you my criteria were entirely superficial. Through my teens, the goals became status-driven, a top university, a well-paid job with the approval of relatives. What's shifted in the last few years is less the content of the goals than the reasoning behind them. I now ask whether something would still appeal to me if nobody ever found out about it. So the goals themselves have narrowed, but the motivation behind them has become a great deal more honest.
Question 3. Does everyone set goals for themselves? The word everyone is doing a lot of work here. Never accept everyone. Answering the exact question as asked is a coherence marker in its own right. Estimate honestly rather than inventing statistics. I'd guess that's a minority is safer and sounds more educated than a fabricated percentage. Add a dimension the examiner didn't mention here, that goal setting assumes control over your circumstances.
I doubt it, at least not consciously or in any structured way. There's a certain type of person who writes things down, breaks them into milestones, and reviews them, but I'd guess that's a minority. Most people drift towards the things they want without ever articulating them as goals, and I'm not convinced that's a failing. There's also a socioeconomic dimension to it. Goal setting presupposes a degree of control over your circumstances, and if you're working 2 jobs simply to stay afloat, planning 5 years ahead can feel like a luxury rather than a discipline.
Question 4. Do you think material rewards are more important than other rewards at work? An opinion question with an adjective worth challenging. Swap the adjective. Answering more urgent rather than more important shows precision and buys you a whole argument. Use a threshold, below it money dominates, above it money stops working. Thresholds are far more sophisticated than always/never. Evidence it with observable behavior rather than a study you cannot name.
They are more urgent, I'd say, rather than more important, and I think that distinction matters. Pay has to be adequate first. No amount of praise compensates for a salary you can't live on. But once people are comfortably above that threshold, money is remarkably poor at sustaining motivation, whereas recognition, autonomy, and the sense that the work matters keep people engaged for years. You can see it in the fact that people frequently leave well-paid jobs they find meaningless, and far less frequently leave modestly paid jobs where they feel genuinely valued.
Question 5. What makes people feel proud of themselves? Fully abstract and the closest one to the original card. Signal the shape of your answer first. Broadly 2 things, I think. The examiner can now follow you effortlessly. Include the negative case. What does not produce pride? Contrast is cheap to produce and marks strong lexis. Close with a cultural observation. It lifts the answer off you personally and onto the wider question.
Broadly 2 things, I think. The first is effort that was visible only to them. The early mornings, the failed attempts nobody saw, because pride seems to attach to the struggle rather than to the outcome. The second is doing something for other people that costs them something. Interestingly, unearned success rarely produces pride, it produces relief, or even a sort of imposter feeling. And I'd add that pride is quite culturally regulated. In Vietnam, openly declaring that you're proud of yourself can come across as boastful, so people tend to express it through their families instead.
The Part 3 Language Bank. Notice how much of it is hedging and conceding, rather than impressive vocabulary, on the grounds that said, I'd guess that's a minority. Broadly 2 things. Fluent, careful qualification is what separates a strong Part 3 from a confident but flat one. Finally, the marking. Remember the caveat. Band 9 here is our own assessment against the publicly available descriptors, not a certified examiner score. 4 criteria, each worth 25%. Fluency and coherence. Speaks at length without noticeable effort. Hesitation is for the idea, not the word. Structure comes from the card's own bullets, so no forced linkers. Every Part 3 answer answers the question asked, then develops it. Lexical resource. Natural, idiomatic phrasing used precisely, deflated, sustaining it, following through, self-authored. Less common items appear where they are needed, not sprinkled for show. Paraphrases the question instead of echoing it back. Grammatical range and accuracy. Wide mix handled accurately, past perfect, conditionals, cleft sentences, it's that I kept my word, reduced relatives. Complex sentences stay under control, no sentence collapses midway. Errors are rare and non-systematic. Pronunciation. Stress placed on the words carrying the meaning, not spread evenly. Pausing used to group ideas, which is what makes speech easy to follow. An accent is fine, intelligibility is the criterion, not sounding British or American. And 5 ways candidates lose marks on exactly this card. The third one is the killer. 90 seconds on what it was, and 10 seconds on why you felt proud. The examiner has already decided you have nothing abstract to say. Watch the clock inside your own answer. Your turn. Set a timer for 1 minute and plan this card in keywords only. Record 2 minutes without stopping, however rough it feels. Listen back once for content and a second time only for where you paused. Then answer the 5 part 3 questions in under 90 seconds each. Post your part 2 recording length in the comments. Aim for 1 minute 45 to 2 minutes. If this helped, subscribe to bmaster79. There is a new ielts lesson every week. See you in the next one.